what is the type of business that supports the lifestyle that you want to live? Because fulfillment for me means one thing, for you means something different, right? You don't have a business problem, you have a pattern problem, and the pattern is the old identity. Like your way of being before served you to bring you here, but it will not serve you to go where you want to go.
What does it mean to truly be of service? What does it truly mean to create impact? What does it truly mean to connect with the heart?
Your business is inviting you to go beyond your comfort zone, to do the things that you've never done before, to maybe like deal with the amount of energy that you are not used to.
Phil, Carolina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm excited to be here with you.
I found the description of your Substack the moment you sign up to Sacred Business Flow. I found it fascinating because it said, build a business that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. And I love that. Can you explain what that means to you two?
But I'll share my perspective. I've been doing this entrepreneurship thing for quite some time, and I had an experience, and a lot of this, originally for me, the seed of this was from my own direct experience. I had the experience of kind of creating what I like to describe as an accidental business. It was kind of born of necessity. At the time, I had a partner who was running a hearing clinic, and it was kind of like when Facebook was just getting started, and we figured out that we could use Facebook to drastically increase our patient flow to the practice. And then I figured out, wow, this is something that people would actually pay a lot of money for to, if I could help them do this. And so very quickly, the business of helping people run their Facebook ads became much larger than our practice. Over a course of maybe 3 to 6 months, it grew from my first client to, over $100,000 a month. And it was just me and a virtual assistant at the time. And at first I thought this was awesome. I was kind of early in my entrepreneurial journey, and I was like, wow, I've hit the jackpot here. I never, at that point, coming out of corporate America, I never imagined in my life that I would be able to create this kind of income. But as time kind of went on, I started to kind of notice that, money can take you so far, but I started to notice that my heart wasn't really in it. And I started to kind of feel the drag of showing up and, the burnout of kind of the service that was required to kind of keep this thing going. And around that same time, and I believe it was a manifestation of my own creations, a lot of physical illness started to show up in my life. And I ended up with a tumor on my neck, and all sorts of other things started to break down. And so this was a huge wake up call and a warning sign for me. And I remember exactly where I was. I was living in Boston at the time. And I remember it was like the dead of winter, and I was just so tired. And I made the decision to kind of shut this business down that I'd created. Could have probably done it smarter and found someone to buy it or something like this, but I had burned myself out to the point that I was just like, screw this. If I've done this once, I can do this again. And part of that I feel was a little bit of immaturity, and there were certain things that were kind of working in my favor that were beyond my own intelligence. My own intelligence and ego told me, yes, I could do this again. But then also there was this deep conviction that from that experience that there had to be a different way of doing business. And so I started kind of seeking out mentors. And from when I was running the business in the hearing space, I'd had the privilege of running retreats for doctors and bringing in a lot of pretty well-known people kind of in the spirituality, the meditation space, the people that were helping to kind of bring balance. And so I started seeking out these mentors and just kind of looking at what could I learn? These were people that had reached at least the level of financial success I had, and in many cases, 10x, 100x that, but they seemed to be doing it on a different set of rules that up until that point, I didn't really have an understanding of. And so, that really kind of set me off on a journey of many years, which kind of dovetails with meeting Carolina in Costa Rica. And I would love to let Carolina add a little bit to the story, but that kind of brings us to our meeting and how we started to think about what we've created here with Sacred Business Flow.
Yeah, it's very interesting because like in my case, and we met in Costa Rica, but like at the time I was living in Canada and I was working for a corporation as well. And then I decided to quit, and then I started building a business that felt really good in the inside. But I wasn't being able to have the external success in terms of like how I was charging my clients, how like the transformation, the clarity, like my messaging, like I had no plan. I was just following my own intuition, and I built my business, and I was paying my bills and more with my business. But it wasn't like I hit a ceiling and I'm like, well, it feels good and I'm doing what I love, but I know there's more. I know there's another level of abundance that I can experience with this that I'm not aware. And then when we met in Costa Rica, like he became my client for his health issues and the energy work that I was doing. And then I hired him as my business coach. And that's the connection. He kind of had the external success and feeling good on the outside. And I kind of had the feeling good in the inside, and we're like, well, but we want both. How can we, and that was like our own journey in how we can help people and ourselves to create something. And that's how Secret Business was born in a way.
That's fascinating how you two got together in that way. So it really sounds like you're not just helping people build a business that's profitable, but really one that's aligned with their purpose, with their values, and with their intuition and with people's lifestyle, right?
Yeah, we say that a sacred business is a combination of all of who you are, right? It's like all your certifications, but also like your unique experiences, like your failures, like your victories in your life. And what is the type of business that supports the lifestyle that you want to live? Because fulfillment for me means one thing, for you means something different, right? So, and sometimes it's just like we think there's one way of doing business. And like, that's not how we help people. It's like, it's tailored to you, but like, how do you want to serve? Often people like what the world wants, and that's a valid question too, but also like, what is your gift and how do you want to serve, and how do we combine what you have in the inside and what the outer world is wanting from you?
And I think that there's, one of the things we also help people specifically that are kind of in transition. There's kind of this pattern that we've seen with people that have achieved success in like one arena of their life, where even when they have this recognition or this kind of like this, like for me, quite frankly, it was a complete breakdown. When they have this breakdown, or which it doesn't have to be, but the awareness that something needs to change and that maybe the external motivations that have been driving them to a certain point aren't going to take them where they want to go. There's also this danger, even with that recognition, that they can start to create something new that feels like, looks like it's going to feel better, but it's actually using the same energy, right? It's, and I often tell this story. We have a client in Costa Rica, and he talks about this thing called the eco rat race, which I think is a perfect example of this. We've had clients in this space where, maybe they were a VC or a founder of a startup, and then they're like, I can't do this anymore, and they have an exit, and they make some large sum of money, and they're like, okay, I'm going to, and they go and do ayahuasca, for example, for the first time, and they're like, okay, well, now I've had this awakening. My calling in life is to move to Costa Rica and open a retreat center and help other people have an awakening. But then what they do is they bring this like same New York energy, or like this aggression energy, to the process of being in the jungle and creating a retreat center, and they end up repeating the exact same pattern. And so a lot of what we're helping to people do is to kind of slow down and kind of go back to the foundation and really examine the truth of their experience, and maybe think about, like as Carolyn said, is there a different way to approach this?
You mentioned the word patterns, and I think that's really interesting, right? With the people you work with, the entrepreneurs you work with, what are some of the most common subconscious patterns even that are holding entrepreneurs back from building a thriving business and one that's aligned with who they are as a person?
There's like, it's like overall, like each person is a little different. But one that I see like as a kind of like a big one is like they have a definition. For example, what Phil said, like either you had a high level of success before, or you see success in other people, right? And then you label that like success means like struggle, not having time. And then they have a lot of, and this is like a pattern of like not trusting. And then if we go, then we can talk about the frequencies, like, and then faith is one of the frequencies of a sacred business, right? When you step into creating a business from your heart, you need to be okay with the not knowing, with the unknown, right? And then most people like, oh, I have success and that's the way it is to be. And like, there's another way of doing it, but you need to break the pattern that it has to be the way you think it will be. And then, so this idea of like success is this, they label this way, then when they block themselves unconsciously from being successful because they've already labeled what success is. And this is unconscious, right? This is not something that they're like thinking about it. And then they like I built before, or the experience I had before, now I need to do this, and that. And I don't want to do any of that anymore, so that they block themselves from creating something. And faith is a big one. Like, they like either they need to know, or they like, I'm not okay being in the unknown, and they don't want to take action, or they think it's going to be like completely different. And then that's like, but this is what it's like. I could go on and on, but this is like, faith is a big one. Service is another one too. But yeah.
Yeah, there's another one we see often, which is especially with people who have achieved high markers of credibility and they're receiving external validation back from society, peers, the world, that, if they're moving into something that's new for them. For example, we were talking to someone recently who is high level in the US healthcare system and has a strong desire to move into mentorship, into working with young women who haven't had the highest, haven't had as many opportunities. And there's this thing where when you've achieved this success, it could be a little scary to kind of step into a new arena where you have to be beginner's mind, right? It's like to accept and to admit that like things might be a little bit messy. Things, I may not know what to do here, but in this other part of life, I am seen as the one who knows everything and that people look to for leadership. And so I feel this is a big part of the journey. It's a big part of everyone's journey, quite frankly. Like, it's something we've talked about on our show before. Like, I remember when we started this business, I had this perception or this self-identity of myself as kind of like more of this hardcore, like digital marketer, data-driven guy. And then all of a sudden, Caroline and I were at this mastermind event in Austin, and it was our first time doing a presentation together. And if you could have seen all the head talk going on in here, because like it was a completely different context, but it was a lot of my old peers. But now we're on stage and we're like doing meditation and we're like doing journaling and listening to music. And I was just like, who am I? Like, who is this person that's like up here? And I've never been super confident on the stage anyway, but just to allow myself to experience myself in that new way, even though that's like what I really wanted on the inside, it's challenging. I had all these questions like, how are people viewing me right now? Like, what were their expectations of me? Is this the end of my career? Am I ever going to be invited back to a mastermind like this to present again? So that's another example that's from my own experience.
Yeah, self-doubt is for sure like a huge pattern in, I would say, 100% of people that get in touch with us. And it's interesting to notice because they were very confident on the phase before, like they have a lot of certifications, maybe like they were CEOs or they had like a higher level something, or even in another business, like they had the certain level of confidence. But when it comes to create this from the heart, then like, and self-doubt, like they can't post, they can't send an email, they can't just write the message, they can't just talk about what they do. And it's a pattern too.
I think it's also this sense of if you've been doing something for years in a particular way, it almost becomes your identity, and it literally, neurological pathways are cemented in your brain on doing things a certain way. And then making a pivot and maybe indeed leading more from the heart or building a business more from the heart, it's like your identity might be so wrapped up in the old ways of doing things, combined with, oh, how are people going to perceive me or perceive me doing this new thing in which I'm not as good as I was in the past? I think that blocks a lot of people from making a shift like that, right?
You nailed it. That's exactly what it is. And that's why we say, like, you don't have a business problem, you have a pattern problem. And the pattern is the old identity. Like your way of being before served you to bring you here, but it will not serve you to go where you want to go. And that's the thing about like die before you die, like you need to become a different person. And that's kind of like why I think the work that we do matters so much, because we don't go out there thinking about, let me build a business, but let me think about the transformation or who do I want to become. But once you have the awareness that the business is inviting the transformation, then the process is more like you can be kinder to yourself. You can treat the process as like, oh, this is my old me trying to protect me. This is just because that's the way I've been doing things forever, instead of thinking that you're doing wrong or this is not for you or you're not enough. But you nailed them.
Yeah.
100%.
It brings to mind when you guys did the workshop for us in our community, where particularly something you said, Carolina, really changed a lot for me in how I operate as an entrepreneur. Because always I've been doing like product launches for years, right? And my belief was like I'm only doing a launch right if I'm like working crazy hours and I'm pretty much stressed, because that means I'm doing enough. Like I'm doing everything I can in order to make that launch as successful as possible. So during every launch and after every launch, I would be like, I need like a holiday, and I would get back pains and all that stuff. And I remember you telling me like, what if like doing a launch doesn't have to be stressful? You could actually make more and serve more if you're not stressed out of your mind and if you're not putting in like, I don't know, overworking yourself. And I remember like hearing that and I was like, that's pretty interesting. Let me try that out during the following launch and the launch after that and the launch after that. And it's so interesting how in the beginning it took me quite some effort because I'm fighting against my old identity. But now I'm like, oh, if we're doing a big launch, I don't have to be stressed for that launch to be a success. But it's just such a pattern that took a while to override, and you really helped me with that. So I want to thank you for that publicly.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. It's just like sometimes we don't realize like how like one question could change a whole life, right? Like because you just couldn't like maybe envision that because you've been doing this the same way. And like somebody just reflect, oh, what if there's a possibility? And it's great that you were actually able to experience the shift and like keep doing all the launches, but now like chill and having fun, right?
Yeah, and it's one of those examples where you're fighting against your own patterns, which might just be there after years of doing something in the same way, or they might even come from your childhood or your upbringing or past career. So yeah, maybe you have a few more examples of common patterns that you see with the people you work with that are like holding them back from moving further in their business.
Yeah, like one that I see a lot, it's like everybody, that's probably common in your community as well, like this fear of being seen. Right? It's kind of like maybe, and sometimes they relate to that. Like, imagine that you're like a kid and you're just like playing and you're like all excited with all your paintings, whatever, but then you're painting on the wall and then your mom comes and like, don't do this because you're not supposed to. Like those, like, it's not that she's like, I don't want to go into the, the trauma, but like those things causes like in us, like, oh, so I shouldn't be like flowing and doing this and having fun and being myself because this is wrong. And then as we live life, like we start like kind of like shaping ourselves in a certain behavior. But the problem with that is people kind of like keep telling themselves the same story and just trying to understand with the mind and like this was caused because of, and I remember in the workshop with your community, like I always invite like, oh, where's the stress? Where's the trigger in your body, right? Because you can release patterns by feeling it and breathing through it. So like if you fear to be seen, put yourself in that situation and then create like, raise the volume and like, what is it? Because we don't fear to be seen. We fear the feeling, right? And once you kind of like turn the feeling like safe, then being seen is fine. But we don't need to go deep into all the stories and all of that. But being seen is one that blocks people like big time, like being vulnerable. And what if people think that I'm this or that? Or
There was a story I was going to share that was kind of related to also the genesis of this business. We talk about this idea of everything being connected, and also we talk about an idea of fragmentation a lot. And this idea of fragmentation, I think, is a very important one. And where this dawned on me was prior to starting this business, I was kind of like the CMO for a pretty well-known online persona, someone that was getting, over 1 million views a month, like pretty doing well for many, many years. And, he had hired me to kind of help expand his vision. He had a very, very large vision. But then he also had this personal coach who was helping kind of support, his personal vision for his life and his relationships and his habits and all of these things. And I worked with him for about 3 years. I think he worked with his coach for roughly the same time. And it dawned on me one day, like, what a missed opportunity, because me and this coach, I think he was paying probably at least $50,000, $60,000 a year. We never had a conversation. And so like, I'm over here in one ear, kind of like talking strategy. And then this other person's probably helping him try to find balance in his life. And I often wonder, and I've had a few conversations with him since, because we aren't working, we're friends, but we're not working together. And like, I often wonder how often we were like putting conflicting ideas in his head. And so this is where Carolina and I started thinking, like, this stuff is all connected. Like how can we, if we're really being called as leaders, or if anyone's being called to leader to step into their highest level of service or impact, how can we keep these things fragmented? How can the picture or the conversation of our business not include what's happening behind the scenes and with our life and our relationships and, different things that might be going on in our life? And so that's a big one where, people are compartmentalizing, and so a big part of our work and like what we do within our engagements is helping people step back and like look at all of these factors. And this also helps with the judgment and the shame thing too, because sometimes people, it's like, if I give you a perfect business plan, but I don't know that you're going through a divorce or you're going through an international move or any of these other things, like, how complete of a picture is that? And you fail to execute on that plan. Like, is that your fault, or really was the plan flawed from the beginning, even though, like, if you look through it through like a traditional business lens, it could look perfect, right? Or something that AI could spit out would look perfect. And so that's a big part of us, is like allowing people to kind of honor that complete picture and to work with it. And ultimately, and that really leads to our harmony map, use that as an advantage, right? Like we talk about this idea of a breakthrough frequency. Like, there's a way that if you allow all of your experience to be part of the conversation, this could actually be your advantage rather than the thing that you might perceive as your weakness. So
let's actually talk about the harmony map, because I know a lot of people in your audience really love that. And at the core of what you teach are those 9 fundamental frequencies. So maybe you can dive a little bit about what that is exactly.
Yeah, so this was that was kind of born when we met and we decided to work together, and then we started asking questions like, what is it that would make those two worlds combine and help people to move forward, right? So if we have the strategy, but we have the outer world and we have the inner world, like, what is it that will combine and, unblock, in a way, people to actually have, a successful business in their terms. And then we kept like asking questions, how we can serve, how we can create something that like, kind of like help you in every direction. And I think through those questions, we start like receiving answers, like I would say like kind of like channeling and receiving answers that like, that was the combination. And we came with those 9 fundamental frequencies, that the combination of them, the center is the sacred business. So your business is always inviting you to expand one or more. So people take the harmony and they're like, sometimes they have like love is very, very high. So like my own business, like at the beginning, love was, I was doing from my heart. Absolutely. But then my service frequency wouldn't be as high because I did not have clear who I was helping, and then my business is inviting me to expand service. So then when we say like, the lowest frequency, when you take the harmony map, the lowest one is your biggest opportunity. Like you could use your strength to expand your business because you're already doing something that you love. You're already connected to bliss, or let's say you trust the divine and, being with the unknown is fine for you. But then do you have clarity how you serve? Do you have clarity about the transformation? And this is going to bring service up. And then and we notice that sometimes when people realize that and they shift, the frequency that they operate shifts. So then they start getting more results. They start moving forward in a different way. Of course, there's action. Of course, they're not on top of the mountain meditating. They are taking actions and, doing all the things that they need to do. But the energy behind is an energy of I'm here to serve now. And it we've had so many calls, discovery calls with people taking the Harmony map, and 100% it's spot on and unlock something for them that they're oh, I never thought that, this was an issue, or, we like to call a breakthrough frequency, not because it's not a problem. It's the biggest opportunity.
And when I look at your 9 fundamental frequencies, you have them in 3 categories, right? You have the you frequencies, you have the business frequencies, and then you have the divine frequencies. And each of those consist of 3 frequencies. Can you maybe briefly explain what those are?
Yeah, so I'll go for some and then you go for others. So
Go ahead.
So for example, the divine, we have faith, love, and bliss, right? So faith is your ability to be with the unknown and kind of know deep inside that you're co-creating with the universe, that you are not alone and you don't need to figure it out everything with your own head. And maybe that's how you've been operating before, especially if you're a business person. It's mind oriented all the time. But now if you're creating your sacred business, it's oh, maybe there is, a greater force here guiding me. And can I just be present to see what's next and take one step at a time? Love, because when you do something with love, you increase your magnetism. If you're doing something that you love, you're fully present. So your energy is all there. So are you creating something that you love? Bliss is, I connect bliss with fun. But most people, I think they don't understand fun the way we define fun. It's not that external fun of drinking and partying and going crazy. It's more that for me, watching a sunset is this, it's fun because it's beautiful. It's joy, right?
Joy, yeah.
So exactly. So are you doing that? Your business is inviting you to have, it's not that everything you do in your business will be joyful. There's parts that will not, but the main thing that you're doing is bringing you joy. And then for the you, those are the 3 frequencies for the divine. So the you will be vitality, for example. Because you need energy. So vitality is connected to how you take care of your body, but how much of life force is flowing through you freely. Are you blocking, all the time, or you're kind of taking care of yourself, eating, sleeping, exercising, and all of that, and having enough energy to serve. The other frequency of you is growth. And I love this one because it challenges people quite a bit, which is your business is inviting you to go beyond your comfort zone, to do the things that you've never done before, to maybe deal with the amount of energy that you are not used to, and that's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good, it's not nice. But once you are able to expand your nervous system in a way to accept that, to do the things that sometimes just had this thought, sometimes people think that oh, I'm going to just do what feels good to me. You're not going to grow. Yes, the main thing of what you're doing has to bring bliss, and it has to be something that you love. But for you to actually expand your thing, you need to do a lot of things that you don't really like, that doesn't really feel good. And are you okay with that? And that's, the growth part of it. And so I said, vitality, growth, and connection. Your ability to connect to people, right? Sometimes you'll be behind your computer and you're just sending messages but you're not building relationships. You're not participating on something like this. You're not sending someone a private message and hey, I'm launching this business. So it's how you interact and connect with others. in events, online, through emails, through your own sharing stories, asking people, talking to people about your business, not, hiding behind your computer and expecting that someday somebody will like, hey, there's a version of it eventually in your business, and I think you guys experienced that too, but it wasn't at the beginning that you're just sitting like posting things and people liking you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the six. Philip, I can go on and on. Or
Yeah, go ahead. I think people that are curious can we have a lot more material, and if anyone wants to explore these topics, and even on our Substack, we've categorized all of our content across them. But I was just going to point to another aspect of this, which I think is really interesting and that we really enjoy exploring with folks, is that really this is a diagnostic tool that's leading people back, and that's why it's called harmony, like towards balance, right? And so one of the other things that we often see, and it shows up very clearly on this map, is that oftentimes, and you can even, there's a way that we like to sometimes relate this to like the masculine and the feminine energy as well. So if you think of business and discipline specifically, and some of those things, they tend to be more masculine energy, and then divine people can tend to relate more with feminine. And there can be this thing where people, it's almost like a rejection, and sometimes it's because, like, for example, in my case, when I was like heavy in that kind of, very similar to the way you described the launch energy, like that was totally me. It was like do or die, like aggressive, like whatever it takes. When I had that kind of crash out, there was this period of like rejection. Like I remember going on a retreat in Costa Rica, and they were doing stuff around like vision and like what's your next action, what are you gonna do? And I had such a rejection. It was like I couldn't even look at it. I was like judging, and I was like, I just want to be in my space and like just flow and like let life unfold, because I had such a almost like trauma response to the way I had allowed myself to be, in a sense. And so then kind of I went more into that other side of things, but then at some point I needed to make the journey back to center. And a lot of what we see with our clients is that, they are very much in this flow and this essence and this dance, and everything is kind of just going to, manifest for me, which is beautiful, but then they're lacking the structure and the container to hold this. And so then there's certain work that they need to do. And then we have the folks that are kind of probably more in my camp, as I was, or what you described, Jari, which need to bring a little bit more of this ability to breathe and expansiveness and elements of love, bliss, and faith. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the things that is often very illuminating for people when they take the harmony map, is they can see like very clearly where they've been putting their energy and where some of these patterns and the beliefs of how, how these things have shown up either positively or they perceive negative in their life are running the show, and when they're able to kind of come back to center, that's why we say the sacred business, this is where things really start to move in a new way, I feel. So.
And this is very much connected to the three frequencies of business, which is simplicity, service, and
discipline.
Simplicity and discipline. And so those three are like very much like the masculine, like the, who do you you serve, like the focus, the, the routine, the, the structure to allow your essence to flow.
Yeah, we'll link to the harmony map as well for everyone who's interested in taking it. We'll link to it in the description. And it's super interesting. I think what you're doing is very unique, because normally you see just one of those two camps, right? So it's either purely business, tactical strategy, or it's very much more like spiritual approach to entrepreneurship. But combining those two together, I think that's when you really become this complete entrepreneur, and you cannot separate how you feel, what you believe, your identity, your values from your business. And I'd be very interested actually to see if I knew about this years ago when I had my previous business, how that would have helped me. Because actually when I had my productivity newsletter, I found myself starting that business purely because of some interest into productivity, and I started creating content about it, and that content started resonating with people. And purely because it was resonating, I kept doing more and more and more of it. And like fast forward 2 years later, and I had a full productivity business with digital products and coaching and whatsoever. But actually, I found myself after doing that for 2 or 3 years, just like almost hating my business. I was like, I don't want to write more about productivity and talk more about productivity. It's not the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. But because it was my business, it was just the thing I did. It was making me, a solid income. I kept doing it, and eventually, Phil, like you mentioned with your story, I started running into like my body just rejecting it, right? So I also had this tumor diagnosis out of the blue with no signs whatsoever, and I was fortunate that it actually didn't turn into something worse. And it's just so interesting because I never, like years ago, I never approached business with a more spiritual angle or looking at my own values. Is it fully aligned with it? I just looked at it like almost like a money making tool. And now I realize when you combine both the strategy and the tactics with your own values, with your own beliefs, that's when you become this more complete entrepreneur, right? You're fully aligned.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's oh, go ahead, Caroline.
you can go.
I was just gonna say, and like our kind of hope is that, in many ways, you don't need to go through this journey of like complete breakdown, right? And so it's like it's helping people kind of see this earlier. And then the other thing that's really, it's an interesting thing that I'm starting to note now, which was not even really part of the conversation when we started this business, is that I also feel that we're on the edge of this looming kind of existential crisis, like with AI and all these things that are happening, where, to your point, like if people have just been doing things because they thought this was the way to make money and this and that, and now all the stuff is kind of, it's like people are asking the question like, well, what is my inherent value? Like, what does it actually mean to be human? And, what place does that fit in this equation of occupation as so much stuff is being done by machines? I think that's also part of our kind of evolutionary awakening process, which is, I think we are being called to examine this, right? And ask these questions of like, what does it mean to truly be of service? What does it truly mean to create impact? What does it truly mean to connect with the heart? And in many ways, I think we're kind of being forced to examine that in an accelerated way than maybe perhaps in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that with these AI tools, it's like stuff, like it's so easy to create stuff that it also feels like, to me, it also arises some questions on, okay, but what actually matters to me? What do I enjoy doing more? Which is a good thing, but it's also, I can imagine it also going two different ways,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think that it's such a great opportunity that like the way I like, and maybe it's like a simple way of seeing it, but all the things that are automated or can be automated, or it's like just using your brain, it is or will be replaced by AI. But I don't think that anything that truly comes from your heart will. But AI can serve that. So I almost feel that it's like the evolution, and AI is part of our spiritual evolution as well, right? Like it can't be separate. Like if everything is connected, and because the universe is in constant expansion, it has to be serving expansion if you allow it to be. The same way that your business is inviting expansion if you allow it to be. So like the questions that we should be asking right now, it's exactly that. Like, what do you truly want? What are my gifts? Like, what do I love doing it that I could lose myself just in that thing that maybe I can teach, maybe I can share, maybe I can, and how can AI support me? Because maybe before, like, I don't know, to create an artist studio, you would need like a team and a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. But now it's kind of like online and you can have AI assisting you. And I think it's just kind of like forcing people in every way to go to the center of their hearts. But it's really scary because we've been operating by the mind for like probably like thousands of years now, and now we are kind of like, oh yeah, the mind can take us here, but it won't take us any further because right now our brains are being like replaced by this other brain. And now all I can do is follow my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think community is going to be more and more important over the next few years, whether it's online or offline or both. Like that's the thing AI can't replace, right? So one last question for the both of you. This is a question I ask everyone on the podcast. If you could go back in time to your younger entrepreneurial self, what's one lesson or insight you would share?
It's a great question.
I I would say take more risks. I think like what I struggled the most for my whole career was trying to choose what was safe. Um, and then going to kind of like I never really paused to ask the question, like, what do I truly want? What can I create? And I add to this, like, I started working for hotels, airlines, and I was just like climbing the ladder and had a very successful career, like in pretty much every company that I worked for. But I never really asked the question, like, is this what I truly want to do? And I thought that, I put myself in that box and I'm like, this is safe. I can see 20 years ahead of me. Then this is what I should be doing. And then it led me to like crazy headaches, like burning out and a lot of things. So if I could go back to my 18-year-old self, like, you have nothing to lose,
Mm.
And it's funny
Mhm.
that I'm taking more risks right now that technically we think that we have more to lose in this stage of my life. But when you're like, yeah, and at the end of the day, I honestly believe that we don't have anything to lose. We just lose time in life if we don't do what we truly want to do. But I would probably have tried like those things earlier in my life.
Take more risks. What about you,
Yeah.
Phil?
I would say to kind of lean into this self-expression and allowing yourself to be seen. Like this journey took me so long, so long, and it served me in many ways. I built a lot of skills that were kind of elaborate ways of, and especially when I think about being all, I mean, I've been online since I was a kid. Like my dad worked for IBM and I grew up on his lap in front of a computer, but I learned to use technology in many ways to compensate for some of the parts of my personality that didn't allow me to like express and be seen and show up as the person that I am. And then in fact, like even, for the years prior to starting this business, like I was always kind of, my nickname, I've let it go at this point, but one of my clients had given me the name The Wizard, because I was kind of like this wizard behind the curtain, because I knew I wanted to help create impact, but I was so afraid. Like I couldn't get on an interview like this. I couldn't get on a stage. I couldn't even write or express. And so I had to borrow that energy, right? So it was like okay for me to kind of be behind the scenes and help someone else like share their message. And the whole time I had this like deep longing of like, I want to experience that for myself. And when I finally allowed it's like everything else in life. When I finally allowed myself that, it was just like, what have you been doing? Like, why have you been hiding all this time? And of course there's layers, right, of becoming in that. But, it was just kind of this, when I saw through that illusion, I kind of was like, why did I wait till I was like almost 40 years old to be able to like share like what I truly believed. And so I really encourage people to flex that muscle and to allow themselves to feel what it, the liberation that really comes when you allow yourself to share from the heart.
Love it. Where should people go if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
I would say, well, you're the Substack guys, so that's a great place. We've really in the last year, we've made Substack our home, and it was really the best decision we've ever made, like for where we had been and our business and where we are now. So love.sacredbusinessflow.com is our Substack. If you want to just get a quick deep dive into our perspective, beyond what was shared here, as we've talked about, the Harmony Map is a really great place to start. So that's just harmony.sacredbusinessflow.com. So really, those are the two things. If you want some personalized thoughts and suggestions that might help you in your journey, Harmony Map. If you're curious about what we share, Substack is really where we hang out. So
yeah, awesome. We'll link to that, both the resources in the description for anyone to check out, and I would highly recommend it. Phil and Carolina, thank you so much for jumping on today. You shared a lot of insights and lessons with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you. That was very nice
thank you
to be
so
here
much,
with
Sherry.
you.